Fear is a shadow that walks with all of us. Sometimes it whispers quietly, telling us we are not enough. Sometimes it roars, freezing us in place when life calls us to act. And other times, it disguises itself, pretending to be caution, logic, or even humility, when in truth, it is only fear holding the reins of our life. I did not write these words as someone who has never trembled. I have lived in the company of fear. I know what it means to lie awake at night, heart racing, imagining the 1,000 ways things could go wrong. I know what it feels like to want something deeply, but hesitate at the threshold, paralyzed by what if. But here is the truth that changed my life. Fear is not the enemy. Fear is a teacher. And once you learn its lessons, you no longer need to bow to it. Instead, you can rise above. This book is not about pretending to be fearless. That is a myth. Fear is wired into us. It is part of our biology, our history, our survival. To deny fear is to deny being human. But to master yourself, to master the relationship you have with fear, that is the true path to freedom. We will walk this path together. First, we will understand fear. Then, we will learn how to break free from its grip. We will build the muscles of inner strength. And finally, we will step onto the path of self-mastery, where fear no longer drives your decisions, but instead becomes a signal you know how to interpret and rise above. I will share research, yes, but I will also share stories, some from my own life, some from people I've walked with, and some from history. And I will ask you questions, because mastery is not a lecture. It is a dialogue between you and your deepest self. So, if you've ever felt stuck, if you've ever let fear hold you back, if you've ever dreamed of a life larger than the one you are living now, welcome. This book is for you. Together, we rise. Welcome to MindSpark, where great books meet powerful ideas. Chapter 1. Understanding Fear. Fear. The very word carries weight. Say it aloud and notice what your body does. Your shoulders may tense. Your breath may quicken. Even without a threat in front of you, the body remembers. Fear lives not just in the mind, but in the muscles, in the pulse, in the stories we tell ourselves about the world. But let us ask the simplest question. What is fear, really? At its most basic, fear is a survival mechanism. It is the body's way of saying, pay attention, something here could harm you. Imagine our ancestors thousands of years ago. A rustle in the grass could mean the wind or a predator. Those who ignored fear did not live long enough to pass on their genes. Those who listened, who froze, who fled, they survived. So in one sense, fear is love. It is life's way of keeping us safe. Without it, we would have walked into fires, drowned in rivers, or chased dangerous dreams without caution. But here is the paradox. The same mechanism that once saved us can also imprison us. The biology of fear. Fear begins in the brain, in a tiny almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. The amygdala scans for threats, faster than conscious thought. If it senses danger, it floods the body with adrenaline and cortisol. Heart races, muscles tense, eyes widen, breath shortens. This is the famous fight, flight, or freeze response. I remember once standing backstage before giving a speech. My hands shook, my mouth dried, my heart pounded as if a tiger were in the room. But there was no tiger. There were only people waiting to hear my words. The amygdala, however, did not know the difference. This is fear's great flaw. It cannot distinguish between physical danger and emotional risk. To the brain, stepping on stage and stepping into a lion's den can feel alarmingly similar. And so, many of us live not in actual danger, but in the shadow of imagined danger. We fear rejection. We fear failure. We fear looking foolish. And these fears, though not life-threatening, can be just as paralyzing as a tiger's roar. The psychology of fear. Beyond biology, fear has a psychological layer. It is shaped by our experiences, beliefs, and the stories we inherit. A child once laughed at for speaking up in class may grow into an adult who fears public speaking. A person abandoned in love may carry the fear of intimacy for decades. Fear is sticky. It clings not just to moments, but to meaning. And often, it whispers a simple but devastating lie. You are not enough. Let me share a story. A young woman I once coached had a dream of starting her own business. She had the skills, the passion, the vision. But every time she thought about taking the leap, fear spoke louder. What if you fail? What if people laugh? What if you lose everything? We worked together to name the fear. Naming it was the first step, because fear thrives in the dark. Once spoken, it loses some of its grip. Then we traced the fear back. Where did it come from? She realized her father, though loving, had always said, "Play it safe. Don't take risks." His words had lodged in her mind, and decades later, they were still echoing. This is how fear often works, not as a rational protector, but as an outdated guardian, applying old rules to new realities. Social fear, the fear of being seen. Perhaps the most universal fear is not of death or pain, but of rejection. Humans are wired to belong. For our ancestors, exile meant death. To be cast out of the tribe was to lose protection, food, and warmth. And so, deep in our bones, we equate rejection with annihilation. This is why public speaking terrifies more people than snakes or heights. When you stand before a crowd, you risk the gaze of the tribe, you risk disapproval. And some part of you fears that if you fail, you will be cast out. But here is the truth. The tribe today is not the same as the tribe of old. If you stumble on stage, if your voice shakes, if someone disapproves, you do not die. Yet your body reacts as if you might. Recognizing this gap between ancient wiring and modern reality is the first key to rising above fear. My own dance with fear. I want to pause here and tell you something personal. For years, I lived under the weight of fear. Not the fear of heights or spiders, but the fear of judgment. I wanted to write. I wanted to share my thoughts. But each time I put words on paper, a voice in my head mocked me. Who are you to say this? You're not smart enough, not experienced enough, not worthy. That voice was cruel, but it was also familiar. It sounded like teachers who once doubted me, like friends who once dismissed me, like the echo of my own insecurities. One day, I realized something that changed everything. The voice of fear is not the voice of truth. It is only one voice among many, and I could choose which voice to follow. That was the beginning of freedom, the gift, hidden in fear. Here is a radical idea. Fear carries within it the very map to our growth. Wherever you feel fear, there lies the edge of your expansion. Fear is not just a warning, it is also a compass. If you fear speaking, perhaps your power lies in finding your voice. If you fear love, perhaps your healing lies in opening your heart. If you fear failure, perhaps your success lies in daring greatly. Think of fear not as a stop sign, but as a signal. Here is where life is inviting you to grow. This does not mean every fear should be pursued. Some fears are wise. Do not leap from cliffs or play with fire. But most of the fears that limit our lives are not about survival. They are about identity, belonging, self-worth. And those fears, once faced, can become the doorway to mastery. Fear's many masks. One of the reasons fear is so tricky is because it rarely introduces itself by name. Fear is clever. It wears disguises. It hides behind masks that look respectable, even admirable. Sometimes fear dresses up as perfectionism. You tell yourself, I just want to get it right before I begin. But months pass, years pass, and still you prepare, you polish, you wait, never realizing that what you call perfection is really paralysis. Sometimes fear calls itself logic. You say, I need more evidence, more certainty, more guarantees. Of course, logic has its place, but often what we call logic is fear's way of stalling. Logic seeks clarity. Fear seeks endless delay. Sometimes fear even disguises itself as humility. You whisper, oh, I'm not ready. I don't want the spotlight. I'm not good enough yet. But humility does not silence your gifts. Only fear does that. And perhaps the most dangerous mask of all is anger. Have you noticed how often rage hides fear? A person lashes out at a colleague because deep down they fear inadequacy. A parent yells at a child because they fear losing control. A leader blames others because they fear their own failure being exposed. When we name fear, we strip away the masks, and only then can we see clearly what we are truly facing. Cultural stories of fear. Fear is not just personal, it is also cultural. Different societies tell different stories about what should be feared. In some cultures, failure is seen as shameful, a stain that marks you for life. In others, failure is almost a badge of honor, proof that you dared to try. In some families, speaking up is dangerous. You fear disrespecting elders. In others, silence is dangerous. You fear being overlooked. I grew up in a culture that valued safety and stability. The unspoken rule was, do not take risks, do not stand out, do not disturb the order. For years I obeyed that rule, but deep down my spirit longed for more. Understanding fear means also understanding the stories we inherited. Some of these stories served our parents and grandparents well, but the world has changed. What once kept them safe may now keep us small. The cost of living in fear. Let us be honest. Fear is expensive. It costs us opportunities, relationships, and peace of mind. How many careers have gone unlived because someone feared rejection? How many love stories never began because someone feared vulnerability? How many inventions never reached the world because someone feared ridicule? The greatest tragedy of fear is not the moments we feel it. It is the lives we never live because of it. I once met a man in his 70s who said, with tears in his eyes, "All my life I wanted to paint, but I became an accountant because it was safe. Now I realize I spent decades serving numbers when my soul longed to serve colors." That is the cost of fear, not just lost years, but lost selves. Learning to listen differently. Here is a question. What if fear is not meant to be obeyed or ignored, but interpreted? Think of fear as a smoke alarm. Sometimes it signals real fire and you must act. Other times it goes off because of burnt toast. If you rip the alarm off the wall, you put yourself in danger. If you panic at every beep, you exhaust yourself. But if you learn to check calmly, to discern real fire from false alarm, then fear becomes a guide, not a tyrant. In my own life, I began practicing this. Whenever fear spoke, I paused and asked, "What are you really trying to protect me from?" Sometimes the answer was wise, but more often it was outdated, based on old wounds or old rules that no longer applied. This shift, from reacting to reflecting, is the beginning of mastery, the invitation of fear. At the end of this chapter, I want to leave you with a radical reframe. Fear is not a wall, but a doorway. Every time you feel fear, you are being invited to step into growth. The question is not, how do I kill fear? The question is, how do I rise above fear so that it no longer decides the limits of my life? This book will give you tools for that rising. But before tools comes awareness. And now you have begun to see fear not as a monster under the bed, but as a messenger. So the next time you feel your chest tighten, your palms sweat, your mind race, pause, breathe, and ask, what is the invitation hidden here? Because fear, when understood, is not the end of freedom. It is the beginning. By the way, if you're enjoying this summary, make sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next one. Chapter 2. Breaking Free. Fear, when misunderstood, chains us. But fear, when faced with courage, becomes fuel. The great shift of a lifetime is realizing that fear is not an order you must follow. It is an opportunity you can rise above. So how do we break free? It is not about erasing fear completely. That is impossible. What we are after is a new relationship, a posture of freedom, where fear may still knock on the door, but it no longer dictates your destiny. Let us walk through some pathways to freedom. Step 1. Awareness. Naming the beast. The first step in breaking free is simple yet powerful. Name your fear. Fear thrives in the shadows. When left unspoken, it feels monstrous, overwhelming, formless. But when you bring it into the light, when you put words to it, it shrinks. Try this. The next time you feel the tightness in your chest, pause and ask, what am I really afraid of? Write it down. Be honest, even if it sounds small or silly. I'm afraid people will laugh at me. I am afraid of losing money. I'm afraid of being alone. Notice how the fear, once named, loses some of its sting. The monster under the bed is scariest in the dark. Shine a light, and it is often smaller than you imagined. I remember the first time I said aloud, I am afraid of being forgotten. It startled me. I had thought my fears were about success or failure, but deep down, it was the fear of living a life that left no mark. Once named, I could work with it. I could begin asking, what does it mean to live a life worth remembering? Awareness is liberation's doorway. Step 2. Reframe the story. Fear is not just biology, it is narrative. The meaning we attach to fear shapes its power. For example, imagine two athletes before a big game. Both feel their hearts racing, palms sweating, breath quickening. One says, I'm terrified. This means I'm going to choke. The other says, I'm pumped. My body is getting ready to perform. Same symptoms, different story, entirely different outcomes. This is the art of reframing. Instead of saying, I'm afraid, you can say, I'm excited. Instead of, this means I'll fail, you can say, this means I'm growing. When I began public speaking, I used to dread the shaky voice, the pounding chest, but then I learned to reframe. Those sensations were not signs of weakness. They were signs of aliveness. My body was giving me energy to deliver my message. That reframe changed everything. Ask yourself, what story am I telling about this fear? Then ask, what else could this mean? Step 3. Take small, brave steps. Here is a myth. Courage means erasing fear and leaping in one giant move. In reality, courage is often a series of small steps taken while fear still whispers. If you fear speaking up in meetings, your first step is not delivering a TED Talk. Your first step might be sharing one idea with one trusted colleague. If you fear intimacy, your first step is not declaring love on a rooftop. It might be sharing one small truth with a friend. Freedom comes not from waiting for fear to vanish, but from acting while fear is still present. I love the story of a man named Alex, who wanted to travel alone but was paralyzed by fear. Instead of forcing himself onto a plane across the world, he began small, a solo dinner, then a solo day trip, then a weekend away. Step by step, his fear softened. By the time he booked his first international flight, he was not fearless, but he was free. Action shrinks fear. Every time you take a step, no matter how small, you teach your brain, I can handle this. Step 4. Build rituals of calm. When fear surges, the body hijacks the mind. The amygdala screams louder than reason. That is why breaking free requires tools to calm the body so the mind can regain clarity. Some of the most powerful tools are also the simplest. Breathing. Try box breathing. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. Repeat. Within minutes, your nervous system shifts from panic to peace. Grounding. Place your feet on the floor. Notice 5 things you see, 4 things you feel, 3 things you hear, 2 things you smell, 1 thing you taste. This pulls you from fear's stories back into the present moment. Movement. Shake your body, stretch, walk briskly. Fear freezes, movement melts the freeze. I use these rituals before every important talk. I still feel fear, but now I have tools to ride the wave instead of drown in it. Step 5. Rewrite your identity. Fear often roots itself in identity. I am not the kind of person who can do this. To break free, you must rewrite the story of who you are. Instead of saying, I'm just shy, say, I'm learning to use my voice. Instead of, I'm bad with money, say, I'm becoming someone who manages money wisely. Identity is powerful because the brain seeks consistency. If you tell yourself you are a runner, you run, even on days you don't feel like it. If you tell yourself you are courageous, you begin to act in ways that prove it. Every small action you take in defiance of fear is a vote for the person you are becoming. The power of exposure. Here is a secret. Fear shrinks in the presence of familiarity. Psychologists call this exposure therapy. The things we fear most often lose their sting when we approach them gradually. Afraid of spiders? Begin by looking at pictures, then sit in the same room with one in a jar. Step by step, the brain learns, I can handle this. This principle applies to social fears as well. If you fear rejection, you can practice what entrepreneur Jia Jiang called rejection therapy, deliberately seeking small rejections each day. Ask for a discount at a coffee shop. Ask a stranger for a high five. Most will say yes. Some will say no. Either way, you learn the world does not end. I practiced this once by asking a bookstore clerk if I could move my favorite book to the front display. He laughed and said, "Sure, why not?" The fear in me shrank, because here's the truth. Rejection rarely kills us, but the fear of it often kills our dreams. The role of support. Breaking free is not a solo act. Fear grows in isolation, but it weakens in community. When you share your fears with a trusted friend, mentor, or therapist, you realize you are not alone. Others have walked this road. Others have stumbled, risen, and kept going. Support gives perspective. What feels enormous in your head may look manageable when spoken aloud. And sometimes, the simple words, "I believe in you," from someone you trust, are enough to tip the balance from paralysis to action. I will never forget the mentor who told me, before my first book launch, "Yes, people may criticize, but remember, the only ones who never get criticized are the ones who never do anything." That perspective freed me. A personal turning point. Let me share a moment when fear almost won. Years ago, I was invited to speak at a conference. It was my biggest stage yet. Hundreds of people, cameras, lights, a chance to share my message widely. But the night before, fear struck hard. My inner critic screamed, "You'll freeze. You'll embarrass yourself. You're not ready." I wanted to cancel, truly. I drafted the email in my head. "I'm sorry, I can't make it." But then I remembered everything I had been learning. I named the fear. I am afraid of humiliation. I reframed it. This fear means I care. It means this matters to me. I calmed my body with breathing. I reminded myself of my identity. I am someone who shares truth, even when afraid. The next day, I walked on stage, heart pounding, voice trembling. But I did it. And something magical happened. The fear did not vanish, but it transformed. Midway through, I felt a wave of connection with the audience, as if fear had been the doorway to authenticity. That moment taught me, courage is not the absence of fear, it is moving forward in spite of it. Breaking free is a practice. Let me be clear, breaking free is not a one-time event. It is a practice. Fear will return. New stages, new risks, new loves, all will awaken fear again. But with each practice, you grow stronger. With each act of courage, you expand your freedom. And slowly, something beautiful happens. You stop expecting fear to vanish, and you start expecting yourself to rise. That is freedom. Chapter 3. Building Inner Strength. Fear may visit, but inner strength decides whether it stays. Breaking free is the first step, but staying free requires something deeper. Resilience, discipline, and a mindset that carries you through storms. Think of fear as waves in the ocean. You cannot stop the waves from coming, but you can learn to swim. Inner strength is the art of swimming, not perfectly, not without struggle, but with enough power to keep moving forward no matter how strong the tide. So how do we build this inner strength? Strength is built, not born. First, we must abandon the myth that some people are simply born courageous, while others are doomed to live in fear. Courage is not a genetic lottery, it is a muscle, and like any muscle, it grows when exercised. When you lift weights at the gym, your muscles tear slightly, then repair stronger. When you face fear, the same thing happens to your spirit. Each time you push against fear, you grow. Each time you stumble and get back up, you build resilience. So stop asking, "Am I brave enough?" and start asking, "How can I train my bravery today?" The role of daily habits. Inner strength is not forged in grand moments alone. It is built in the daily choices, the ordinary disciplines that shape who we become. Morning rituals. How you begin the day sets the tone. A moment of silence, a journal entry, a walk, or a prayer can anchor you before fear has a chance to hijack your mind. Physical health. A tired body breeds anxious thoughts. Sleep, movement, and nutrition are not luxuries. They are foundations of courage. I have learned that many of my worst fears felt 10 times bigger when I was exhausted. Consistency over intensity. Strength comes not from rare bursts of effort, but from steady, repeated action. 10 minutes of journaling every day beats an hour once a month. Think of habits as the bricks of your inner fortress. One brick may not look like much, but over time they create walls that hold you steady when fear storms the gates. The power of self-talk. Perhaps the most underestimated tool of inner strength is the way we speak to ourselves. Fear's voice is loud, cruel, relentless. You can't do this. You'll fail. Everyone will see you're a fraud. If we do not consciously answer back, we begin to mistake fear's voice for our own. So practice talking to yourself the way you would talk to a friend. When a friend is afraid, you do not say, "Yes, you're worthless." You say, "I know it's scary, but you're stronger than you think. I believe in you." I began writing affirmations not because I believed them at first, but because I wanted to believe them. I am capable. I am growing. I can handle this. At first, they felt like lies, but over time, they became truths. Remember this: courage does not mean never doubting yourself. It means learning to speak louder than the doubt. Resilience, the art of rising again. Inner strength is not about never falling. It is about always rising. Life will knock you down. Projects will fail. Relationships will end. Plans will collapse. The question is not whether you will fall, but how you will rise. Resilience is the capacity to look at failure and say, "This is not the end of me. This is the classroom where I learn." History is full of resilient souls. Thomas Edison, who failed thousands of times before inventing the light bulb, said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison and emerged not with bitterness, but with vision, declaring, "I never lose. I either win or learn." I once launched a project that flopped miserably. For months, I was ashamed. But eventually, I realized that failure had given me something success never could: humility, patience, and the ability to separate my worth from my outcomes. That was resilience being born in me. Resilience is not glamorous. It is messy, tear-stained, and often lonely. But it is the foundation of mastery. The importance of boundaries. Strength is not just about pushing harder. It is also about knowing when to rest, when to say no, when to protect your energy. Fear often thrives when we are stretched too thin. Exhaustion magnifies insecurities. Overcommitment breeds anxiety. Building inner strength requires boundaries, choosing carefully what deserves your time, your attention, your heart. Every no to distraction or depletion is a yes to clarity and courage. I used to say yes to every request, afraid of disappointing others. But eventually, I realized that in saying yes to everyone else, I was saying no to myself. Learning to set boundaries was not weakness, it was wisdom. The role of gratitude. Fear narrows our vision. It makes us obsess about what could go wrong. Gratitude, on the other hand, widens our vision. It reminds us of what is already right. A simple daily practice of gratitude, writing down 3 things each night, can shift the mind from scarcity to abundance. And when the mind is anchored in abundance, fear loses some of its grip. I remember once, in a season of deep anxiety, I forced myself to list 3 gratitudes every night. At first, they felt trivial. I had a good cup of coffee, I saw a kind smile. But over weeks, my eyes trained themselves to notice goodness. Fear still visited, but it did not reign. Gratitude is not denial. It does not say, "There is no fear." It says, "Fear is not the whole story." The community factor. Inner strength grows faster in community. We become like the people we spend time with. If you surround yourself with fearful, cynical voices, your own fear multiplies. If you surround yourself with courageous, hopeful voices, your own courage expands. This is why accountability groups, masterminds, or even one supportive friend can change everything. They remind you of your strength when you forget it. They hold your vision when fear clouds it. I cannot count the times I wanted to quit, only to hear a friend say, "Remember why you started. I see the fire in you." Inner strength is personal, but it is never built alone. Choosing growth over comfort. At the heart of inner strength is one decision. Do you want comfort or do you want growth? Comfort is safe, familiar, predictable. Growth is uncomfortable, uncertain, stretching. Fear will always tempt you with comfort. Stay where you are, don't risk it, don't change. But growth requires discomfort. Muscles ache after training, hearts ache after vulnerability, minds ache after new learning. And yet these aches are the signs of becoming. Each time you choose growth over comfort, you strengthen the part of you that leads instead of follows. And over time, that choice becomes who you are. My journey toward strength, I must confess. Building inner strength has not been glamorous in my life. It has meant early mornings when I wanted to stay in bed. It has meant saying no to invitations so I could focus on my priorities. It has meant crying through disappointments and standing up again anyway. But the reward is priceless. The reward is knowing that fear can visit, but not conquer. The reward is waking up with the quiet confidence that whatever comes, I have what it takes to face it. Inner strength does not make you invincible. It makes you unbreakable. Closing the chapter. Breaking free begins the journey. Building inner strength continues it. With every habit, every boundary, every reframed thought, every act of resilience, you lay another stone on the path to self-mastery. Fear may roar, doubt may whisper, storms may rage, but when you have built the muscles of courage, you can stand. You can bend without breaking. You can rise again and again. And this is the essence of strength. Not perfection, but perseverance. Not invulnerability, but resilience. Not the absence of fear, but the mastery of self in the presence of fear. So I ask you, what will you do today to build your strength? What small habit, what brave word, what boundary, what act of gratitude? Choose one. Begin there. Build brick by brick. Because self-mastery is not a destination. It is a practice. And every practice makes you stronger. Chapter 4. The Path to Self-Mastery. We began by understanding fear, then we learned to break free, and finally, we built inner strength. Now comes the summit of the journey, self-mastery. Self-mastery is not about controlling everything. It is about learning to direct yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, your actions, so that they serve your deepest values instead of being ruled by fear or impulse. It is the art of living with intention rather than reaction. The practice of choosing who you want to be, again and again, until that choice becomes your character. Let us explore what it means to walk the path of self-mastery. Self-mastery is a daily choice. First, understand this. Self-mastery is not a one-time event. You do not wake up one day, declare yourself a master, and never struggle again. Self-mastery is a daily decision. It is forged in the moments when you want to give up, but keep going. In the temptations you resist because you see a greater goal. In the quiet hours when no one is watching, and you still choose integrity. I like to think of it as gardening. You cannot simply plant seeds once and expect a lifetime of fruit. You must water, prune, protect, and cultivate day after day. Self-mastery, too, is the slow work of tending to your inner garden. The 3 pillars of self-mastery. Through my journey and study, I have found that self-mastery rests on 3 pillars: awareness, alignment, and action. 1. Awareness. Seeing yourself clearly. You cannot master what you cannot see. Awareness is the mirror that reveals your patterns, your triggers, your strengths, and your shadows. Journaling, meditation, and honest conversations are tools that polish this mirror. They help you notice when fear is steering, when ego is inflating, when old wounds are speaking. Without awareness, you stumble in the dark. With awareness, you gain the power to choose differently. 2. Alignment. Living true to your values. Self-mastery is not just about discipline, it is about direction. Discipline without direction is exhausting. Alignment gives you a compass. What do you truly value? Freedom, love, growth, service? Write them down. Then ask yourself, are my actions aligned with these values, or am I betraying them out of fear or convenience? When your actions match your values, you feel integrity. When they do not, you feel inner conflict. Self-mastery is aligning more and more of your life with what matters most. 3. Action. Becoming who you choose. Awareness and alignment are meaningless without action. Self-mastery shows itself in what you do. Every time you act in line with your values, despite fear, despite temptation, you strengthen your identity. You cast another vote for the person you are becoming. The role of discipline. Discipline is often misunderstood. People think it is about harshness, about forcing yourself into rigid rules. But true discipline is an act of love. It is loving yourself enough to do what is good for you, even when it is not easy. It is protecting your future self from the whims of your present self. Think of a musician. Their mastery is not magic. It is discipline. Hours of practice, scales, repetition. And yet, when they play, the discipline transforms into freedom. So too with life. Discipline may feel restrictive at first, but in time, it births freedom. The freedom to act with strength, clarity, and consistency. Emotional mastery. Self-mastery is not just about actions, it is also about emotions. Too often, we let emotions rule us. Anger makes us lash out. Fear makes us freeze. Desire makes us compromise. But emotions are not dictators. They are signals. They can be felt, acknowledged, and guided. Emotional mastery does not mean suppressing feelings. It means allowing them without being enslaved by them. When anger arises, pause and ask, what boundary is being crossed? When fear arises, ask, what is being protected? When sadness arises, ask, what is being lost that matters to me? This inquiry turns emotions into teachers instead of tyrants. The mastery of the mind. Perhaps the most subtle arena of self-mastery is the mind. Thoughts can be relentless. You're not enough. You'll fail. You can't handle this. Left unchecked, they spiral into prisons. But the truth is, you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. This realization changes everything. Meditation helped me see this clearly. Sitting in silence, I noticed my mind throwing thoughts like storms. But as I practiced watching without attachment, I discovered a deeper calm beneath them. The mind is a tool. Mastery is learning to use it instead of being used by it. The power of vision. A life of self-mastery is guided by vision. Vision is not just goals. It is the picture of the person you want to become and the life you want to create. Fear shrinks your vision. It tells you to aim small, to stay safe. But mastery expands it. It dares to dream, to imagine, to move toward possibility. Write your vision. Speak it aloud. Let it inspire you on the hard days. Because when the why is strong, the how becomes possible. Lessons from masters. History gives us countless examples of those who walked the path of self-mastery. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, who ruled one of the greatest empires yet, wrote daily reminders to himself about humility, patience, and virtue. Miyamoto Musashi, the Japanese swordsman, who said, "The ultimate aim of martial arts is not having to use them." His mastery was inner peace, not just outer skill. Mahatma Gandhi, who faced oppression and violence but mastered himself enough to respond with non-violence, inspiring millions. Their mastery did not come from ease. It came from struggle, discipline, reflection, and unwavering vision. A story of transformation. Let me share the story of Maria. She grew up timid, always afraid of speaking up. Fear ruled her. But in her mid-30s, she decided she could no longer live small. She began journaling daily to notice her fears. She joined a public speaking class, terrified but committed. She built the habit of exercising, realizing that physical strength helped her mental strength. Slowly, she shifted her self-talk from "I can't" to "I am learning." 5 years later, Maria was leading workshops, mentoring others, and living a life she once thought impossible. Not because fear disappeared, but because she mastered herself. Her story reminds me, and maybe reminds you, that transformation is possible at any stage of life. Self-mastery and service. Here is the final secret of self-mastery. It is not just for you. When you rise above fear and master yourself, you become a source of strength for others. Your courage inspires theirs. Your calm steadies theirs. Your authenticity frees theirs. Self-mastery is contagious. And in a world often ruled by fear, your mastery can be a gift that ripples far beyond your own life. Closing reflections. The path to self-mastery is not easy. It asks for awareness, alignment, action. It asks for discipline, resilience, and vision. It asks for daily choices that often feel small, but over time, build a life of immense freedom. But the reward is extraordinary. To live with courage instead of caution. To act from values instead of fears. To create instead of merely react. Self-mastery does not mean perfection. It means progress. It means becoming a little freer, a little stronger, a little truer each day. And so I leave you with this question. If fear did not rule you, if you mastered yourself, what would you dare to create? The world is waiting for your answer. Conclusion. Rising above. We have walked a long road together. From the shadows of fear to the strength of mastery, we have explored what it means to live a life no longer dictated by our deepest anxieties. And now, as we close this book, I want to leave you not with final answers, but with a call to rise. Fear will never fully disappear. If there is one truth I want you to carry, it is this: fear will never vanish completely. And that is not a failure. That is life. You will still feel your heart race before a new opportunity. You will still hear whispers of doubt before a big step. Fear is not something you outgrow. It is something you learn to outshine. Think of it like the night sky. Darkness is always there, but the stars, your courage, your strength, your vision, shine anyway. The darkness does not end the stars. It makes them visible. So do not wait for fear to vanish before you begin. Begin anyway. Fear will walk beside you, but it will no longer walk ahead of you. The journey is ongoing. Self-mastery is not a destination stamped with a certificate. It is a journey, a practice, a rhythm you live day by day. Some days you will feel strong and free. Other days fear will knock you down. That is not failure. It is training. Every stumble is another lesson. Every rise is another victory. When you see mastery as a journey instead of a finish line, you can relax into the process. You stop condemning yourself for not being there yet. You realize that this, the daily practice, the small choices, the imperfect attempts, is the path, passing the torch. But there is more. This book has not only been about you, it has also been about what you will carry into the world. Because courage is contagious. When you rise above fear, you give permission for others to do the same. Your children see you take risks, and they learn boldness. Your friends hear your honesty, and they learn authenticity. Your team sees your resilience, and they learn strength. The world needs your mastery, not just for your sake, but for ours. Because every life lived with freedom lights the path for countless others still trapped in fear. A personal reflection. Let me share a final story. Years ago, I stood at a crossroads. One path was safe, predictable, and small. The other was terrifying, uncertain, and expansive. Fear screamed at me to stay safe. My hands trembled. My chest tightened. Every excuse rose in my mind. But I remembered this truth. Fear often points exactly where growth lies. So I chose the harder path. I stumbled, failed, cried, rose, and tried again. And on the other side, I found not perfection, but freedom. Looking back now, I do not regret the failures. I regret only the years I let fear keep me from trying. And I want to spare you that regret, your call to rise. So here we stand, you and I, at the close of these pages. I cannot walk the path for you, but I can remind you. You are capable. You are stronger than your fears. You are not at the mercy of anxiety, hesitation, or doubt. The next time fear whispers, "You can't," answer with action. The next time doubt says, "Wait," answer with courage. The next time perfectionism insists, "Not yet," answer with "Now." Rise, not because fear is gone, but because your life is worth more than staying small. A final exercise. Before you close this book, I invite you to pause. Take out a journal or a blank page. Write down your answers to 3 questions. What is one fear that has held me back the most? What would my life look like if I rose above it? What is one small action I can take today to step toward that life? Do not overthink. Write honestly. Then commit to that one action. Because books do not change lives, actions do. Closing words. And so, dear reader, the invitation is simple yet profound. Rise above. Rise above fear, not by denying it, but by mastering yourself in its presence. Rise into strength, into freedom, into the life you were meant to live. Your story is still being written. Fear will always try to hold the pen, but now you know, you are the author. So go, write boldly, live freely, love deeply, create fearlessly. And whenever doubt returns, and it will, remember these words. You are stronger than your fear. You are not broken. You are becoming. You are free. Rise above. The world is waiting. If you found value in this video, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share it with a friend who needs this wisdom.